Hey, I come to you today with a review of Washington Black by Esi Edugyan, a 2018 novel set in starts out in 1830 Barbados, and we are told the story through the eyes of and the voice of George Washington Black, a young slave boy whose plantation master, the owner, has died, and a new that the his nephew has taken over, Erasmus Wild, who is an incredibly cruel owner. Uh, the slaves start committing suicide rather than be with him. He is that savage, that barbaric. For historical context, Barbados was a part of the Atlantic slave trade, and we're just actually coming up to 1830 is just the tail end of when there were actual slaves. Things continued on from there, but this is the triangle trade where goods were taken from European countries. In this case, it is Britain, down to Africa, exchanged for slaves who were brought over to places like Barbados, where plantations where the slaves would toil and die. The estimates are that like maybe up to like 2 million Africans died on the trip over, and that many more than that died actually under incredibly brutal conditions in plantations such as this. This story is told very much through the eyes of George Washington Black, Wash, as he's known throughout the story. He's raised by Big Kit, another slave. He hears various stories about his parents, his mother. Maybe she died on the trip over. Maybe she died just there. But he's never known them. And they've basically he and Big Kid have kind of come up with the idea of like, we're going to kill ourselves. That's our only escape. But Erasmus gets wind of this thing, and the next slave that he executes, he also chops off their head, saying like, you can't go back. Your spirit can't go back to Africa because I have your head. And it's like, it's truly that kind of like horrible, hopeless, imagined situation. Obviously was constructed by people and perpetrated on black Africans by white Europeans. The Into this comes into Wash's life comes Christopher Wilde, the brother of Erasmus Wild, Titch, who is a scientist. He's brought over his hydrogen balloon. He's going to do an experiment. Their father, Erasmus and Christopher's father, is a great explorer scientist who is doing explorations up in the Arctic. Lots of knowledge and stuff like that, and who's not all the science and knowledge, like a lot of the great innovations, the industrialization of what are the basis of kind of Western civilization, was funded on the back of the stuff like the Atlantic slave trade and other colonialist practices. But he comes and he selects Wash, basically because like, oh, I think you're about the right size. There's kind of an implication that like as ballast goes, that's kind of the size I need, and so he takes him on as an assistant. But it quickly becomes apparent that Wash is actually has great talent. He has great talent for drawing. He can render things perfectly, wonderfully. And Titch at some point says, it's important to as an artist to write what's actually draw what is actually there, not what you believe is there, which is actually artist advice I've heard. So he becomes his assistant. Philip, a cousin of Erasmus and Titch, arrives at the plantation, and it's like there's some kind of a disruption there. There is a mishap with the balloon, which goes really badly for Wash. And Philip comes with news that that their father is dead. And there's a further mishap with Philip, at which point Titch and Wash end up taking off in that balloon, and thus the novel is sort of is launched from there. We go from Barbados, and this is a trip that takes us up to the Arctic, and then to Nova Scotia, and to London, and to Morocco, and Titch gets left behind fairly quickly along the way. He is definitely Titch. You get this. It's a good portrait of somebody who is. I think as you discover as the novel goes on, even in that opening thing of Titch is not somebody who's actually interested in Wash as a person, whereas this novel is interested in as Wash as a person, as a particular human being who has he's got artistic talents, he's got his own ideas. It's a slave narrative, but I think as it's been called, it's also a Bildungsroman. It's Wash's development as he goes along. He meets a young woman who is, I guess, of mixed blood of I think it's Peloponnesian and English. Tannergoff, a daughter of a marine biologist, which you go by the cover. That is a good cover, because that is a key scene of Wash in the water reaching out to this wondrous, beautiful octopus. And it's shooting black ink, and the black ink. There's a lot of black in this novel, not surprisingly. But there's also I think about the ink and the little doodle down there getting comfortable. A lot of there's just a lot of the of it's really important that Wash is an artist in this book. He is somebody who is trying to kind of come to see the world, and indeed it's a novel where it's talking about sort of how what slavery, the institution of slavery, has done, how it's shaped certain characters in the novel, Titch and Erasmus, how they both in somewhat in differing ways have slotted into this system, and not necessarily even Titch, who is against and has abolitionist goals, still kind of fits into this system. But you also have Wash and Big Kit, and how this has really shaped them, and perhaps how Big Kit does all that she can do to protect those around her that she loves, but she gets you're a human being in this, you get consumed, and that's not a moral failing or anything. But there's also just the thing of how Wash reacts to this and struggles to understand things, but also struggles not to get consumed by it, to become somebody without a home. In some ways, Titch does him a great favor by pulling him out of the fields where he might very easily have died or been tortured to death by Erasmus. But he's also changed him, and he's separated him from the other people on that plantation, and he's on his own. He's lost on his own, and he has to sort of make his own way. And there's a real danger there that he will never make his own way. And that's a part of what this novel is about, is him coming to some kind of a thought there. And I mean, it's one of these, it has I'm not going to give away the ending, but the ending, there's a sense at the ending of he is there unfiltered from the elements, and it's washing across his scarred face, and he can feel it. He can feel it, which I think is, you could become a hardened shell of a person, but the great kind of thing of this novel is that Wash at the end does not. He is not. He can feel that breath across his face. So a beautiful, surprisingly short novel. It's a very, it sort of got talked about as sort of like an adventure novel, and there are scenes in it, but it's not so much an adventure novel as it is a spiritual novel, a novel of spiritual, intellectual, emotional growth of this character. But no steamship adventures in this one. There's some covers that have right here have the hydrogen ship on it, and the hydrogen ship is a little bit at the beginning and a little bit at the end, but it's not really it's not the point of the story. The point of the story is George Washington Black. So I heartily recommend this book, and more videos later.